This is my HID retrofit done almost 3 years ago when I first bought this car. Since I bought the 2018 premium model, it did not come with the LED headlights. The 2019 and onwards would have them. I knew that, so I bought this car knowing that I was going to do this project. I didn't want to mess up the original headlights, so this is actually a brand new spare set that I had bought on eBay. It's held up pretty well, especially the driver's side. Passenger side has a little bit of scuffs, but is barely noticeable, as you can see. The reflectors are a little bit dirty. I'll get into that a little bit later. They're not that shiny. And I'm referring to that reflector housing inside. Just gonna quickly go over this. I did do this 3 years ago, but some people might be interested how to do this or some pointers. First, to get it open, you bake these in the oven, 250 degrees Fahrenheit, for about 7 minutes. Then you start prying these tabs open with a screwdriver. It'll be a good idea not to rest this lens side down because, as I mentioned, it gets scratched really easily. If it doesn't come out, you can pop it back in the oven, and you might have to do it several times to get the glue loosened enough where you can pry both sides apart. Once that's taken apart, you will remove that inner shield. There's two different parts of the plastic housing or chrome housing. You're going to be taking out the bottom part here, and you're going to be enlarging the hole where the halogen bulb used to be to fit the projector. If I didn't mention this earlier, I'm using the Morimoto D2S 4.0. There was no plug and play kit. I had to drill out a much bigger hole into the housing. Before you do any drilling, you want to mark crosshairs to get the orientation roughly in place. This is both on the back of this housing and on the back of the projector so that you get the rotation correct. The rotation is the thing that you really want to get right the first time, because if that goes wrong, your cutoff is not going to be straight, and many headlights don't have a way to adjust the rotation. They only have up, down, left, and right. So the rotation angle you want to get spot on. What I did to get the initial aim was to work on one side at a time, aimed at a wall. I forgot which side I did first, but one side was still the halogen. One side had the projector somewhat loosely installed, so I can mark the basic height. That way you don't have to rely too much on the factory up-down adjustment. There's a screw in there, adjustment screw. I had marked that prior to doing the project. You might want to do that as well. That way, when you mount the projector and it's a little skewed, you have enough range of adjustment. Once you got the rotation correct and the basic up, down, left, right somewhat to your liking, I found some sort of putty, I forgot what that material was, to seal up the back of the housing, and I cut off the bolts of a Dremel. While I was doing this, I wasn't careful and I didn't mask the inside of that reflector, so it's not very shiny. They dull really easily, so if you're doing this project, I would make sure you cover those areas better than I did. Again, you're not really going to notice it, but if you're a perfectionist, you might as well do it right from the start. Finally, the iris shroud is a circle piece that surrounds the projector lens. That also had to be trimmed a little bit because it won't clear, I believe it was the bottom. So I did have to cut a notch out of that with the Dremel. Again, you can't really notice it. So I think I did pretty good there. And then finally, to reseal it is a reverse. You'll pop it back in the oven, 250, push it together. It doesn't create a perfect seal, so you're gonna have to put a layer of silicone. To date, I have not noticed any moisture or flooding issues in either of these housings, but periodically some people like to add more silicone as needed because that does break down over time. Another issue to watch out for is where you buy your light bulbs. I tried to cheap out and buy the D2S bulbs from eBay. And even though that sells OEM, they sent me a fake one. One of the bulbs, I don't know what you call it, the tube was a little bit crooked. I reached out to support and they confirmed that it was indeed a counterfeit. So I just bit the bullet and spent the money for the proper bulbs. After being mounted on the car, I am running a HID kit, a basic one. I forget which brand it was, but they're all your typical 35 watts. I didn't see any reason to use 55. I'm sure you could, but this projector does have a flap that allows you to run a bi-xenon, the high beam and low beam, but I opted not to use that. I decided to retain just the factory high beam, but you have different options when it comes to that. The final aiming for these headlights is the same as typical halogen. You want to park about 25 feet from a wall, preferably on the level surface. So from where your car is, the center of that projector, you're going to measure that distance to the ground. So let's say that's 30 inches. I'm just making this up. Then 25 feet away, it should be 1 to 2 inches lower. So you would measure, let's say 28, 29 inches, and that will be the gradual aim so that you don't blind people oncoming traffic. Just a rough general starting guideline, but that's what I used for mine. Finally, just make sure the next rainstorm, everything is indeed sealed up. Now that I'm about to sell the car, I will say that I was really happy with this mod. I learned something new. I've never done this before, and in a way I was kind of worried. Throughout the years, I have baked many headlights to remove amber strips, but I've never actually dremeled out the housing and done a retrofit. But because I did have some experience opening headlights, it wasn't too big of a deal. So in retrospect, I wouldn't mind doing it again. But I think in the future, the next car will just have LED lights to begin with, avoid a lot of unnecessary hassle. But I do like how it came out. It made nighttime driving a lot better in the Forester. So if you have a 2014, well in this case it's a 2017, they changed the shape of the headlights. If you have a 2017 or 2018 Forester without the HIDs, I would definitely either recommend you have someone do it professionally, or if you really want to, you could do it yourself. It is a great mod. Yes. If I recall correctly, the LED headlights for our model years, it is not a direct fit. The harnesses in the back are slightly different. But if something's changed, you could correct me down below. Because if that was the case, I'm sure I would have just bought the LED headlight to begin with. But if you have any questions, let me know. And have a good day.